You can't get me because I said I'll do it. But as long as you've got me, it matters.
Hello again. We were worried that it was going to be a boring final day of the transfer window, but it's turning out to be anything but. With me on the Football Spy wall to talk transfers is the chief football writer of the Daily Mirror, Martin Lipton. But before we go to him, a few more deals that are doing the rounds ahead of tonight's deadline. The Bristol City striker Nicky Maynard, we understand, is talking to West Ham. Go to the Mirror Football website for details of Roberto Mancini's bid to take the Roma midfielder David Pizarro. He's 32 years old. Mancini wants to take him on loan until the end of the season. No, you really can't believe clubs when they tell you they won't be doing any business on the final day of the window. We told you earlier that the Everton striker Louis Zaha could be set for Spurs. Well, that deal, it would appear, is dependent on the Spurs chairman Daniel Levy finding a taker for the want-away striker Roman Pavlyuchenko. And Millwall, they've signed the striker Andy Keogh on loan from Wolves. The 19-year-old Borussia Dortmund midfielder Thomas Eisfeld, very interesting player, had a couple of injuries over the last year or so. He is understood to have signed for Arsenal, and more details of that amazing move that West Ham have made for the Man United midfielder Ravel Morrison. Remember, he couldn't agree a deal with United. He's set to run out the contract at the end of the season. West Ham have moved in for him, and it's understood to be a deal, a permanent deal, with incentives built into his player terms. And that's a good place to start our chat with Martin Lipton, because Chief Football Writer Martin Lipton, what do you think of that move by West Ham for Ravel Morrison?
Well, I think it's a very brave move by Sam Allardyce. I think we all know that Ravel Morrison has a great deal of talent, but there's a little bit more that comes with him. His scrapes with the law have almost become legendary in Manchester circles. He's been in trouble far, far too many times. And let's be honest, if he, the bright lights of London are even more opportunity for potential misbehaviour than those of Manchester.
Are we doing him a disservice, though, when you say that? I mean, he's a very talented boy. He says he's very misunderstood. Are we doing him a service by suggesting that because Sir Alex Ferguson can control him, that Sam Allardyce can't?
Well, I think if you can't be controlled by Fergie, with all his experience and the fact that he runs the club with such an iron fist, it's going to be hard for anyone to control him. Obviously, Sam knows Alex very well. They were sat 2 seats along from each other at the same table at the FWA tribute dinner to Paul Scholes and Gary Neville on last Sunday week. They definitely would have probably discussed it then, and I'm sure that the questions were asked by Allardyce, and he's had answers to give him the belief that he can look after Morrison. I mean, if he can harness that talent, it's a massive signing for West Ham. I mean, he's got all the ability in the world if he can settle himself down, and maybe a change of environment is actually what he needs more than anything else. And that perhaps even at 18 months out of Manchester, out of his natural environment, might be what Morrison needs. But the flip side is it just potentially gives him more opportunity for the sort of behaviour that has eventually saw Fergie deciding to wipe his hands at the play.
Okay, now we've obviously talked about the bad side. Tell us about the good side of Ravel Morrison. Comes with a huge reputation. Not many people outside Manchester may know too much about him. Tell us why he is such a talented boy. What is it about him that has caught the eye of so many Premier League managers?
Well, the fact is that ever since he came into the youth structure at United, he's been the one they mentioned. He was going to be the next superstar from that group. He apparently, I mean, I've not seen enough. We have to play a couple of times in the Carling Cup, and not much else. He has the ability on the ball to be one of the greats. Fantastic vision. Obviously, he's got pace as well. He's got every attribute as a footballer is there, except at this stage it appears those sort of 6 inches between his ears are to the key, and he's got to sort that out first. But if that can be harnessed, then we're talking about a player who in 18 months' time will be knocking on the door of the highest level. Okay,
well now before we move on, I'm just going to tell you, Roma are confirming, we understand, that they are negotiating a loan deal with Manchester City for the midfielder David Pizarro. He's 32, as we said, and Roma say we will try to complete the deal before tonight. So as we said before, Roma trying to negotiate with Manchester City to allow David Pizarro, he's 32 years old, to go to the Etihad Stadium before tonight's transfer deadline.
Departure for Nigel de Jong, actually, Darren. I mean, it's interesting that de Jong has not been happy the way he's been treated recently. Pizarro, I mean,
when you say treated, sorry to interrupt you, Martin, when you say treated, they can't agree a new deal. That's right, isn't it?
I think he also feels he's not getting enough game time. If you look compared to the likes of Barry and Toy, understandably you might think, he hasn't played that much. He's been in and out, and more out than in this season. And De Jong, played in the World Cup final 18 months ago. He thinks he's a first-team player who should be playing regularly.
Okay. Other rumours coming through, we understand Sunderland, in from the Tottenham striker Roman Pavlyuchenko, and QPR looking at the Fulham striker Bobby Zamora. Mark Hughes worked with him, wants to take him to Loftus Road. First, the Pavlyuchenko to Sunderland. We talked to Simon Bird earlier today, and he was saying that Martin O'Neill does like a big man. Nicholas Bendtner out with a broken nose, hasn't actually caught fire since moving to the Stadium of Light. Can you see that one happening?
Spurs are desperate to get rid. Have been for 18 months. They just want to find the right price. I mean, Daniel Levy, as we know, doesn't ever do anything without trying to make a few bob out of it. They spent money on Pavlyuchenko. It hasn't really worked. When he plays, he's actually not got a bad record, but his lack of mobility is an issue at times. He seems to lack the right motivation on the pitch. And maybe Martin O'Neill believes he can change that. I think that they need a line leader. Clearly, they've looked at other options. Kevin Davies clearly being one of them. Pavlyuchenko is younger than that. He could score goals. Whether he'll want to is another issue. I think it could well happen now. I mean, he'll want to play. Clearly, he's not going to get any game time at Tottenham. He's not happy at being fourth choice. I think he's deservedly fourth choice, to be honest. And also, of course, I think, didn't he score the winning goal against Sunderland? I believe he did. Just a few weeks ago. The first game that O'Neill lost, he was the one who scored the winning goal.
Okay, now we're getting news here on Football Spy Live all the time, and we understand, it's been confirmed. Blackburn Rovers have completed a deal for the striker come attacking midfielder Marcus Olsson. He's 23 years old. He signed on a free transfer from the Swedish side Halmstad, this deal with Ravel Morrison ongoing. West Ham really do want to tie this up before tonight's transfer deadline. A couple of other deals to tell you about. The Press Association now confirming that Queen's Park Rangers are indeed in talks with Fulham to sign the England striker Bobby Zamora. And an interesting one here, Sunderland interested in the West Ham striker Freddie Picquion. Did okay when he was at Portsmouth, not so impressive at Upton Park, particularly in the Championship. We'd expect him to maybe really fill his boots in terms of goals, but Sunderland interested in him as well. But what I want to ask you about, Martin, is a story that you filed to us at the Daily Mirror earlier today about Juventus in for the Manchester United midfielder Paul Pogba. He's 18 years old, hasn't managed to agree a new deal at Old Trafford, could be on his way by the summer. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I mean, if you remember that Pogba was one of those players whose signing caused great dispute at the time. Le Havre initially threatened to take United to FIFA over the signing, a claim that they sort of poached him in the same way that Chelsea's signing of the winger Gael Kakuta caused a major eruption. As we know, Chelsea at one point faced a two-window transfer ban over the signing of Kakuta. United ended up finding an agreement with Le Havre over Pogba, but he hasn't had any opportunity, he would say. United seemingly are worried about losing him to a Premier League side. If they're going to lose him at all, they'd rather do a deal overseas. Juventus may be a better home for him. And it seems that at the moment that Pogba's minded to leave Old Trafford. I mean, it's interesting if United were to lose two really talented young players in the January window in Pogba and Morrison. The suggestion seems to be from the Pogba camp that the signing of Paul Scholes was the final straw. That he thought with injuries he was going to finally get the chance he thinks he deserves. He was going to get a first-team opportunity. Suddenly Scholes comes out of retirement, goes straight into the side, and Pogba gets the raging hump. As an 18-year-old, perhaps he should be a bit more mature than that. But that's the thing, I suppose. He's an 18-year-old. They don't tend to be too mature, do they?
Before we continue, with news coming into us that Bolton and Villarreal have both made bids for the Tottenham midfielder Giovanni Dos Santos. He obviously wants to go back to Spain. The bids are both thought to be too low for Tottenham to entertain them, so he stays until somebody meets their valuation of around about 12-13 million pounds. They turned that down from Udinese last summer because Dos Santos wants to go back to Spain. One club I want to ask you about, Martin, is Arsenal. Loads of tweets, emails coming into us from Arsenal fans asking, are they going to sign a big player? It looks very much as though they're not going to do that. What do you think that says about their chances going into the second half of the season, both for the top four and indeed in the Champions League?
Well, I mean, it's a policy decision. There was an interview yesterday which Ivan Gazidis did with Fox Sport, in which he quite plainly said, we are not a club that spends 30, 40, 50, 60 million pounds on players. We're not going to do it. That is the way Arsenal are. He says there's money there, but they don't seem to want to spend money. Whether or not they do want to spend money, they don't seem to want to spend money. If you look at Arsenal, they are 5 points behind Chelsea, 10 points behind Tottenham. Going into the what is now the second half of the season with 17, 18 games to go. Can they make that up? It's not that easy.
Interesting, because we're hearing now that Thomas Eisfeld, the 19-year-old, Arsene Wenger does like a young rising star. He's signed Thomas Eisfeld on a 4-year deal worth £600,000.
He's not going to go in the first team, is he? He's just it's monitor over the next 18 months to see if he's a first team player. They're heavily dependent now, it seems, on having no more injuries, on Vermaelen staying fit all season, on Robin Van Persie staying fit all season, on perhaps the return of Wilshere. Well, that seems to have been blown out of the water last week with this new injury, which leaves him out for 2 or 3 months. I do think they look somewhat threadbare. It probably means they have to keep Arshavin, who no Arsenal fan wants at the club. You can't expect Oxlade-Chamberlain at age 17, 18 to perform brilliantly every match. He's a young boy. He's still going to be put in, brought out. You've got to handle him properly in the same way that he's done with Walcott. And I think Walcott's had a really good season, but there are still doubts about him. If you look at Arsenal seriously and take out Van Persie, they're nowhere near a top 4 team. With Van Persie, they don't quite look a top 4 team to me. So unless something happens remarkably unlikely in the next 12 hours, I can't see Arsenal finishing in top 4. I really can't. And then, how do they hold on? Interesting and a real worry for every Arsenal fan.
Is this a gamble by Arsene Wenger?
Now, publicly letting it be known through their favoured channels in the city, through the media, through Mundo Deportivo, that they fancy Van Persie. That's a real worry for every Arsenal fan.
Right, just confirm that you're saying Barcelona, did you say?
Not for now, but for the summer, they've leaked a story today to Mundo Deportivo that they fancy Van Persie and that Van Persie wants to play with Fabregas.
And could you see Barcelona paying what would still be a fairly modest fee for Van Persie, but they'll have to pay big wages to take him to the Nou Camp? You could see Van Persie possibly going there in the summer with a year left on his contract?
Well, exactly. He seems reluctant to sign a new deal at Arsenal. There's only 12 months to go. Can they really afford to let him run down that contract and go for nothing? I don't think so. Also, by 2013, he's 29. We all know Wenger's policy on older players. To be fair, it looks at the moment now as if there's every chance that might happen, which would be the worst thing possible. And if Arsenal aren't in the Champions League next season, why would Van Persie, for all his protestations of loyalty and fidelity and love of Arsenal, want to stay? It's a massive issue for them. That's how important top 4 is. I think if they're serious about keeping Van Persie, they need to show a bit of ambition now, but they're running out of time.
You're watching the Football Spy Show, sponsored by our friends at the Car Giant Renault. We're talking to the Daily Mirror's chief football writer, Martin Lipton, who, as you can see, is saying that Arsenal playing a very dangerous game, not bringing in any established, experienced signings during this January transfer window. We're hearing that they're tying up a deal for the 19-year-old Borussia Dortmund midfielder Thomas Eisfeld, who is an attacking midfielder, a 4-year deal for him, but none of the experienced players that Arsenal fans wanted. They wanted a striker, possibly another defender. None of those will be coming in this January transfer window. One player some Arsenal fans did want, Christopher Samba at Blackburn, came out last week, very publicly said that he wants to leave, accused the owners of broken promises. He stays at Blackburn, and his position, you would imagine, would be untenable if he were still to be there by the end of this transfer window. We're hearing that maybe QPR may have another go at trying to sign him before tonight's deadline. But if he does stay, what does that say about his relationship with QPR? I mean, could he possibly pull on that shirt again? Sorry, Blackburn. Could he possibly pull on the Blackburn shirt again, Martin?
Well, I think if he's nowhere else to go, he probably does. But one would have to question his attitude towards it. I still think, along with QPR, that Spurs might go in for a last-minute tickle at him, particularly if they get a deal sorted out for Bassong to go back to France to either Lille or Lyon. I think that Sam wants out. I think he could have got out. I think if he'd really pushed it earlier, he might have been able to do a deal. Now the problem is he's running out of time, and Blackburn obviously, understandably, don't want to lose such an important player because they have to replace. They've got to find someone who'll come in at centre half. It's difficult. It really is when players have made it so clear that they wish to leave the club and then don't. You're going to question their attitude. I mean, the fans are going to be on his back unless he plays brilliantly every game. If he makes a single mistake, they're going to accuse him of deliberately doing it. It's a nightmare scenario, potentially.
Now, you're on your way to Swansea for their game against Chelsea this evening. Chelsea haven't made any other signings other than Gary Cahill this January transfer window. Do you expect them to do any last-minute business before the window closes?
Well, obviously the De Bruyne one has been done, but he's going straight back on loan to Genk.
5.5-year deal, we understand.
Yeah, I mean, given as we now know from Andre Villas-Boas, he doesn't really think the players are up to it or even close to it yet. That's a big shout. In terms of the long-term thoughts of the club, it seems not. I have to say, something may happen, but I'm hearing nothing to indicate that it will. They are interested in Lucas Moura, the Brazilian, but that doesn't appear to be happening this summer. I think this window rather. I think we're looking at a major overhaul of the squad in the summer.
Okay.
At Chelsea, 6 or 7 players out, 6 or 7 players in. I thought they should have done something now. I think they should have been signing players who actually weren't eligible for the Champions League as a statement of intent. Because, you know, if Arsenal do go on a run, then Chelsea are the most vulnerable of the teams in the top 4.
Indeed. Just a bit of news to bring you that you can find details of on the Mirror Football website. Carlos Tevez has appealed to the Premier League against a 6-week fine imposed by Manchester City for his ongoing absence. So Carlos Tevez is obviously not very happy. His advisors have told him to appeal against that fine, and he's done that. Full details of that on the Mirror Football website. I'm sure Martin will be taking an interest in that. Just give us your initial reaction to that news, Martin, coming out about Carlos Tevez.
Well, one can't be surprised by anything that comes from the Carlos Tevez camp, can one? To be honest, I have no sympathy for Tevez anymore. I might have done at various stages in the past, but it's run far too thin for me to be willing to speak up in support of him. I think he's behaving in a way that has gone beyond the pale, actually. His lack of dedication to the club, his selfishness has been scandalous. Whatever the rights and wrongs of the initial situation, he's done nothing to ameliorate that. He's been very happy to paint himself as a victim and a martyr, and quite frankly, he's not.
Okay, one other question I want to put to you before we let you go. We know you've got a long journey up to Wales, South Wales this evening.
Very long journey to Wales, it always has been, it always.
Kevin Davies is possibly going to end speculation over his future by signing a new 18-month contract at Bolton, ending Sunderland's hopes of signing him. Is that a strange bit of business for you as far as Bolton are concerned? I mean, he's 34 years old. They're not playing him regularly. Wouldn't you have thought that Bolton would allow him to go to Sunderland?
I would have done, actually, because it's clear that Owen Cole decided that maybe Kevin's just gone over his sell-by date. That he's just no longer the player he was. He's going with Ngo as his main striker now. He's also got Klasnic there. And Kevin's been a fantastic servant. I think the whole of the country was thrilled to see him get that England cap last season against Montenegro. It was a reward for services rendered to over many years. But it looked as though he was a player on his way out. To offer him a new deal, unless he's going to have some sort of coaching role, which is always possible in the long-term setup there. Now, that might be the reason that he could be seen as a squad influence rather than a squad player.
I'm going to squeeze one more piece in, if I can, and one more question for you, because the whole Carlos Tevez situation, Liverpool expressed the interest in him. Kenny Dalglish happy that their approach for Tevez to City in the swap deal with Andy Carroll leaked to the media, speaking today, saying that he believes transfer business should be kept private.
It's true then, isn't it? That's absolutely uncategorical truth. Absolutely categorical proof that the story is true.
Two questions for you.
Tried to do it.
Two questions for you. A, what does that do for Andy Carroll's confidence? And B, Tevez, can you see him still at City by the time the transfer window closes tonight?
Well, I think if Andy Carroll tried to walk under a door, the only sign would be the hair trailing behind him because he's that low at the moment. His feature has been remarkable. I think he's gone to Liverpool and they've seemed to be gone out of their way to not play to his strengths. he needs delivery. He hasn't had it. I think Cal's still got a lot of talent, but he needs to play in a team that's suited to him. As for Tevez, well, Javabchin tried to get him into Barcelona. We know that twice this month. Both times have been rebuffed. City will not just let him go on loan. They want money for him. I can understand that position entirely. No one, it seems, wants to pay 11 hours, 12 hours to do a deal on Carlos Tevez, the easiest man in the world to do business with. You can't see it, can you? You really can't. I think he's going to be not playing for Manchester City or anybody else until the summer, which is a waste of his talent, unquestionably. At some point, though, the player has to take responsibility for his actions.
Brilliant. Martin Lipton, really appreciate you coming on to the Football Spy show on this transfer deadline day. We understand that you're going to be speaking to us possibly a bit later on from the Swansea game against Chelsea. We look forward to that, but thank you very much indeed for the time being.